CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. All right, everybody, welcome back to CMMS Radio. We are joined today by the one and only Katie Sanders. And I say that because I've said it before. She is a dynamo. Katie Sanders, welcome back to CMMS Radio.
Hey, Greg. Thank you. Good to be back on.
Yeah, and you and I just spent what I think was a awesome time together last week. We did a pretty cool kind of factory tour, and then we had a nice HLM high level meeting. Shout out to Bob Latino, the godfather of the HLM. That was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things you're down there doing, now we can see on the shirt, women in manufacturing. You are straight up all about it. It's no joke. And I hit you up earlier today saying, hey, could we grab a quick episode? Because this week is Women in Construction Week. And it's close enough. And I think it's a big deal. As a matter of fact, last week I had a really cool interview when I was at the Streamline Asset Management Conference. I should say Streamline Asset Management User Conference. Where I learned about some of that kind of stuff too, all these different things that people are doing out there in the world. So I wanted you to be able to share the goodness about this a little bit. I see you got some of your swag there. You got Upkeep rocking. You work at Upkeep. I happen to be an Upkeep ambassador. You already knew that. And got a pretty cool hat there. So we got another sighting, the CMMS Radio cap spotted in the wild. So talk to me about how you first developed your interest and passion for women in manufacturing, women in the trades. And then I want to talk a little bit about what you were working on last Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. So originally my interest, just to start off with, I didn't even know it existed to begin with. I was working for another company before, Upkeep, and I was one of two women. That's it in the company. Small company, but still only two women, me in sales and HR. That was it. And I was always going to all these conferences, and I was always one of the only women there. And I felt like having to fight for the right to be heard, or people listening, or just being treated like a woman in a man's world. And I was like, there has to be something more like to this. There has to be more, because I know there's other women. Like, why are we not band together in this? But and I was searching around online, and I had found women in manufacturing. I was like, this is so awesome. Like, I got to find out what this is about. Go online, do my research, find them on LinkedIn. I'm big on LinkedIn, so I'm scoping around on LinkedIn. And then I find out not only is this massive, it's not just in the States, it's overseas, it's in all different countries. And every single state within the United States has their own chapter, 2, 3, or 4 chapters, depending on how big the state is. I went to my first conference just to see what it was about before I was even a member. And it was in San Diego, California. What was that? 2 or 3 years ago now was my first conference with them.
That was 2023, because we had met at a conference just prior to that out in Orlando. And I remember you telling me about it. And in that moment is where I was like, oh, I didn't know about that either. And just super cool stuff. And I didn't mean to cut off your story, but there's also, you do a lot of stuff local, right? In South Carolina, like you're part of one of the local chapters. Is that what it is?
I am, yeah. South Carolina has one chapter, and I am a member there. I've been a member there for 1.5 years now, and I go to their little events that they have, factory tours, meet and greets during the holiday season, and little lunch and learn sessions that they do. So I try to get to every single one of those too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so speaking of last Friday, you were actually doing some outreach to make sure you could kind of keep that momentum going, because we want that to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Because what happens, as far as I know, you correct me if I'm wrong, but there's not just encouragement, but there's guidance. There's not just empowerment, but really further and further leveling up when it comes to skill sets, what can really be accomplished. And it's not just about breaking down barriers. It's really, like, from my perspective, I say, hey, don't sleep on this, because you're missing some real big advantages from a practitioner's perspective. And I think your intention on Friday is to say, hey, we've got some young up and comers that we want to reach, meet, and bring them in and lift them up, all this good stuff. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's like you were saying, it's not just conferences, it's not just empowerment, although empowerment is a big thing. But yeah, when we were at the facility we were at on Friday, I reached out to one of the managers and I said, hey, I know you have a lot of women that work here, some already members of Women in Manufacturing, but some aren't. And the manager had spoken so highly of one of the women that worked there, said she has such great potential, but it's just untapped. So I was like, oh, well, let's get her signed up for Women in Manufacturing. Let's set up a Zoom call. Let's introduce her to a mentor. That is something that's so important. If you're just starting out as a woman in the industry, or even if you've been in it for a while, we don't want you to be stuck where you're at. You need that mentor. You want that mentor to help build you up. And, we have, they have learning programs too. They sponsor people for school. So I wanted, to reach out to this woman and sign her up, and we were able to do that. So that was exciting to me. And it was like the manager being so, like, he was so gung-ho and forward. He was like, hey, if the company doesn't pay for it, I'll pay for it out of my pocket. Like, I want you to do this. Like, I know that you have so much untapped potential, and it was really good to see that.
And that's what a lot of this stuff is all about. When we get to connect, we get to find out what we're all working on, what we're all passionate about. I'm a big fan of it because I think it's a critical component of how we move forward in America, let alone in the world, when it comes to women in the trades, women in manufacturing, and for this week, women in construction. All of it plays, and it's just fascinating to me and kind of cool, if I'm calling it like I see it.
Yeah.
There are so many of us guys, right? It's not a guys and girls thing, but so many of us that are kind of like paladins, and we want to, like, yeah, no, don't look at me. Come here. This is who you need to be talking to, right? Where you've got really strong skill sets. They really understand what's happening. I know a bunch of women in the trades, women that are in reliability. You're part of that world. You're now part of, like, a heavy part of the CMMS world, being on the front lines at Upkeep. And I think something I want to kind of call out is that over at Upkeep, there are a lot of women that are bolstering their skill sets and learning and even chasing down CMRP certifications. And that is a strong reflection of what the potential is and how hungry these women are to not only make a contribution, but to really know what they're talking about so that they can help, instead of, we see it out there in the world. There's a lot of green people on the front lines that are using buzzwords and they don't know what they really mean. Absolutely. I don't want to tear them down, but there's these options to get this coursework, get to this kind of a conference, like if it's at one of your local chapter meetings or even the big national one that happens. I'm just glad we get a chance to talk about it. Do you have a kind of a favorite thing that you like to talk about if you are out and about and you bump into a young gal or any gal that you seem to think they might be in the trades, where you kind of initiate a conversation?
To initiate the conversation, well, you know me, I'm pretty I'm pretty forward. I'll just be like, hey, have you heard of Women in Manufacturing?
Yeah.
So I just kind of come out and, just ask them and introduce myself. And one of my favorite stories I like to tell is about the big conference that I went to for the first time in San Diego. And how I was in the consultancy area previously for reliability and maintenance. And so coming from that, I was so used to working all of the booths at every conference, but this one I was actually attending. And I remember walking out of the elevator and just being so overwhelmed and overpowered with hearing all of these women that, like, I almost started to cry. I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. These are my people. So I like to bring that up to them, like, hey, yes, it's amazing that we're like this incredible community. There are so many of us. You're not alone. You can, you are empowered to do this. It's refreshing. And it's not just about oh, let's all girls get together and gab about everything. No, we're learning. We're taking that time. We're spending those extra hours after our own work days to learn and put forth the effort to, like you said, become those experts in the fields. They will help you get your CMRP if your company doesn't. There's things like that women in manufacturing does for you. And I just think it's incredible.
Yeah, I do too. And it touches so many areas that I've been in and that I like to talk about when it comes to maintenance management and people and process, all those things. I mean, software, yeah, good, cool, whatever. But I think, I think of somebody like Sonia Mathura or Charlie Matthews, or I mean, I can't remember every name right here, right now, and I'm not using any kind of cheat sheet or anything, but it's a big list of real deal pros that get it, and they don't go so far that they pretend to get it. They actually focus more on not so much what they know, but what they don't know, and they're curious as to how they can continue to improve. And from a practitioner standpoint, I mean, I talk to a lot of the heavy hitters, via text, on phone calls, maybe at an HLM, and we talk about all this stuff, and we're so happy about it because it makes an impact. I have a kind of a weird kind of take on it. I think women in the game of maintenance, manufacturing, everything related to it, maybe even everything in life, there's some advantages when it comes to thought processes, ability to kind of compartmentalize or really dig in and get to work. And this might be a weird analogy, but I'm a fan of MMA, mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
And when the sport really started growing for women, you saw something that we hadn't seen for a long time in the men, a certain level of hunger, desire, dedication, intentionality. And we were saying things like, man, why did this take so long? They are just getting after it. They are just all about it. And that's the thing that's so important about this. And that momentum is starting to sustain and kind of gain more power. And that's just one of the things I wanted to call out about it. I don't know if I'm right. I'm a big fan of it, and it's not a virtue signal. It's critically important.
No, I think you're right. And I think that we call that grit.
Yeah. Love it. Grit.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to keep this one short and sweet. So we're going to end on grit, but just one last takeaway, anything at all, random, doesn't matter what it is, that you would want to say to all of the women out there, if they're considering or already in the trades or want to learn more about it. Anything at all? Where do they go? Who should they talk to? Anything.
Yeah. Where to go? Start on LinkedIn. You can find your chapter within your state. So start on LinkedIn, message people. I mean, it's easy to, LinkedIn, it's easy to find on there. And then just a word, something that I've learned from being in women in manufacturing is 1, you have that grit, reach for it. It's there. Use it. 3, get out of that imposter syndrome in your head. You can do it. So, yeah.
Love it. Thank you very much. Katie Sanders. She's with Upkeep. She is a dynamo. I said it. I meant it. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.